All right, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to score 760 on the GMAT. My name is Raja Sidana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT. I'm going to be your main host today. Supporting me in this webinar, we have Sandeep. Sandeep is a GMAT strategy expert. In fact, probably he's our most experienced GMAT strategy expert, and he's going to be a co-host today. In this webinar, we're going to do three things. We will talk about how do you build a study plan that's personalized to you. Second, we'll talk about how do you, once you have that study plan, what metrics should you measure, and depending on how many areas you need to cover, you could be looking at between 5 and about 30 metrics. So what are these metrics that you should measure? And that's going to be our second thing. And the third thing we're going to talk about is how should you study such that you hit those metrics, you hit those milestones. So fairly application focused, fairly strategy focused webinar. We will solve a couple of questions during this webinar, but primarily the focus is going to be on helping you build that GMAT strategy. Now, because we'll solve a couple of questions, we did send a few video lessons your way. They were on verbidity modifiers and main point concepts in reading comprehension. If you've not gone through these, you can go to our free trial, watch a few video lessons over there. We have video lessons on sentence correction, critical reasoning, RC, number properties, and algebra. With that, we also have some upcoming free webinars. We have a free webinar, we have a free quant workshop that's 24 hours from now, that's tomorrow. And think of this workshop as a proctored mock test in which we not only give you a really good estimate of where you currently stand in GMAT quant, but we also tell you which subsections are preventing you from getting to that Q50, Q51, and which bad habits are preventing you from getting there. In our experience, most people know the concepts that you need to know to excel on GMAT quant. It's just that these bad habits and there are certain weaknesses. If you fix those weaknesses, fix those bad habits, that high quant score is an automatic outcome. So we deduce all of that and give you that study plan to get to that Q50, Q51. And then a week from now, we have a free webinar on how to use that meaning-based approach that e-GMAT invented about 10 years back to solve the easiest to the most challenging sentence correction questions. That's next Saturday, exactly a week from now. All right, with that, I have upwards of 130 students in this webinar. I want to figure out when do you guys plan to take the test. If you've not responded to this poll question, let's do that. And then let's kind of understand, where do you currently stand? What's your current GMAT score? And then what's the target GMAT score? All right. So with regards to where do people currently stand, about half the class, about 45% if you haven't taken a data as of yet, it's about 76 of you over here. Then we kind of have, I'd say, 4 equally size groups, more or less. I mean, the smallest is about 11%, that's 31 to 45 days. But other than that, more or less very, very similar numbers over here. So we have people who are in all stages of their GMAT preparation. That usually leads to a very engaging session. Let's hide this. Then with regards to the current GMAT score, you can really see there are a few folks who are in the 710, 720 bracket, similar number in the 660 to 700. But then a good number of you are in that 400 to 500 bracket. And then the biggest group over here is one that doesn't know their GMAT score as of yet. So during the webinar, we will share a link to a mock test that you could use to estimate what your starting point is. With regard to the target GMAT score, about half the class wants to get to that 730 to 750 score, and then another around about 30% if you want to get to that 760. So about 80% of you, give or take, are in that 730 or higher bracket. Well, let's go right into the webinar pane. So I'm going to really talk about how do you get to that 95 percentile or better. But before that, why should you aim for this higher score? Because yes, giving yourself a name is not enough. You've got to stay motivated. So I'm going to spend about the next 10 slides talking about why should you stay motivated to that 700, 730 or higher score. And if you look at why should you stay motivated, there are three reasons that why you should get to that score of 730 or higher. The first is if you're aiming for a top B school, you need that score. I mean, I know a number of schools have waived that GMAT score requirement, primarily for speakers from the US and test takers or applicants from the US who have a solid undergrad and a solid work X. But for most people, this round is the 2020 admission cycle is probably the most competitive it has ever been in the last 2 decades or so. So that GMAT score definitely helps. If you're looking for scholarships, GMAT score plays a huge role when it comes to scholarships. US B schools give out about $350 million worth of scholarships out there. European B schools give out about $50 million or so. And then the third and probably the most important reason, probably the most ignored reason when people that people really do is the difference in total earnings over a 10-year period. And you look at someone who graduates from a tier 1 school versus someone who graduates from a tier 2 school, that's about $500,000 over a 10-year period right now. And this number is the highest it has ever been till date. But in my belief, in my opinion, this is going to go even higher. Here's some data to back those claims. You can really see how the median scores at top B schools are trending from 2014 to 2018, and I believe 2020 these scores would even be higher. Overall, if you look at stats, for the top 25 schools, for 23 of them, the scores actually increased. For the 24th school, they remain the same because Harvard was already there at that 730 odd score. There are certain schools such as MIT and Columbia where about 80% of the admitted class has a score of 700 or higher. I mean, what these schools are essentially telling you is that if you don't have a 700, don't even bother applying. For the remaining schools, we don't know. They don't provide that data. Other schools could have a similar statistic. It's just that these two schools provide this data. And this is despite the fact that we've had a pretty significant decline between 2014 to 2018 in the GMAT test taking population. And again, this trend has continued for schools that are ranked, 26 to 50 here. You can see Rice, you can see Marshall, and a few other schools that have seen a significant increase in their median GMAT scores. Essentially, whatever happens at top B schools, the tier 1 B schools, the tier 2 B schools kind of follow that. Here's some. So this is statistical data, but here's some anecdotal data where GMAT scores made a difference. Nishant, one of our former students, he scored a 690, was rejected by a bunch of schools over here, and Tuck and Smeal, they give you feedback on your application, and they told him, we love your candidacy, just your GMAT score is not up there. He improved to a 740 and received multiple full fellowships as well as an admit with scholarship from Columbia. Okay. Pravi scored a 680, applied to about 7 schools, didn't receive a single interview invite, improved to a 740, and she just updated her application. She didn't even apply. Within 7 hours, she had 5 interview invites, and she had a total of $180,000 worth of scholarships from various schools. KK or Krishnakant, as he's called, applied in round 2 with a score of 680, was rejected by pretty much every school he applied to, improved to 720 and applied in round 3. So this is R3 for you, by the way. So, and was accepted by every school he applied to. He got multiple full fellowships. He's currently studying at Scheller with a full ride. Bottom line is, GMAT score is way more important today than it was a decade ago. So now the second reason, and this is where I think the GMAT score becomes even more important, is scholarships. So USB schools give about $350 million worth of scholarships, and we get through about 10,000 paying students every year. Based on our estimates, out of this $350 million, about 55% of this money goes to people who score 740 or higher, and pretty much all of this money goes to folks who score 710 or higher. So essentially, if you get to that 740 or higher score, you're looking at least a $40,000 scholarship amount, if not higher. And there are two factors that decide how much scholarship money you get. One is your GMAT score. The second is your likability during the interview over there. Suraj says, can we update, when can we update the scores? Can I update one day before the deadline? You can actually update the score even before applying. You can update the score till a day before you actually receive your decisions. So, and I'm going to share some stories about this. Here's some anecdotal data that again to back that statistical claim. Mansi scored 770. She got admits from pretty much every school she applied to: Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Kellogg, and INSEAD. She just graduated from Kellogg. She had a $90,000 total scholarship. Victor, again, 770, got full ride from Ross and Ken Flagler. You can see what does a full ride look like. Kong Bui scored 760, got 5 full fellowships. His total scholarship amount, if you sum up all the schools that he received a full ride from, was about $600,000. He graduated from Ohio Fisher. The kind of scholarship that he got from Ohio Fisher was really special. He not only got a full ride, but also received $1,700 as stipend every month for studying there. So he got paid every month for studying there. Okay. Similarly, Nishant, Pravi, and Krish KK, you can really see the total scholarship amounts over here. Here's another very interesting story, and we've seen more and more of such stories. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'd see about 125 such stories, again, unedited interviews over there. So Ayush, one of our former students, scored 710, applied to a bunch of schools, and Columbia and Ross both waitlisted him. He actually reached out to them and he said, hey, what happened? We interviewed. I thought we really connected well. I thought, the school just made logical sense, and it seems like I was a fit for the school. So what happened? And the schools told him, yes, we love your candidacy, but your GMAT score is not high enough. So this was round 2. He went back, improved his GMAT to 750, didn't even apply again. He just updated. He was being waitlisted, so he updated his score. That waitlist converted into an admission with about $90,000 worth of scholarship money. Again, and this says about 100 such. Now we have about 130 such in success stories out there. It's the world's largest collection of GMAT and MBA journeys by a margin, I would say. I think the channel next to it, which is probably GMAT Club, it probably has a fifth, just about 20% of as many success stories as we do. And here's a quote by John Fuller, who's the former admissions director at Ross. He says that someone with a 770 is way more likely to get a financial reward. Why? Because the school wants to buy that high GMAT score. Now, the third reason, which is I think the most important reason and the most ignored reason, is this delta in total earnings. Most of you do an MBA because you want to do something better in your life, because you want to have a better life, a more rewarding life, and a part of that more rewarding life is the financial remuneration. And to do this, I'm going to compare two schools. One's Babson, which is in Boston, and MIT. Both of these schools are in Boston. They're about 20 miles away. So, and about 65% of graduates from both these schools find a job in the New England area, which is the area around Boston and New York and Yale and whereabouts. So essentially, you could argue that they have access to a similar set of opportunities. Now, when you look at their starting salaries, they're very different right now. In fact, MIT's base salary has actually gone up during the pandemic. It's more around that 143, 144K right now. When you look at the starting bonus, it's actually very different as well. So the median first year compensation at these schools is right now, the delta is about 70K. This data is from last year. This year's data is about 70K right now. Even if you consider 45K as the median delta, why? Because you won't get the sign-on bonus every year. You're looking at about 450K of total delta. So again, when you get to that, if you're aiming for that 720 score, 730 score, 740 score, just make sure you remember this piece. Why? Because it's worth getting that score. Why? Because it's because of all these reasons. But it's not going to be easy to get that score. There's a reason why a 740 is 97 percentile. But 100,000 people aim to get there. only 3,000, and 100,000 people put in the effort, only 3,000 actually get there. Now, with that, I think let's talk about what does it take to get there. And one thing, the takeaway is which is on there, which is on this slide, is that if you want to ace the GMAT, there is this one thing that you need to focus on, which is buildability. A lot of people, when they think about studying for the GMAT, they focus on things which are not as important. For example, timing. People start studying for the GMAT and they really say, I need to get really fast at answering questions. They really say, I've got to figure out which questions to leave and which questions to attempt. I've got to figure out, what am I going to do in the first 10 minutes? What am I going to do in the next 10 minutes? And so on and so forth. These things are relevant. They are important. But when it comes to the relative importance to this, I would say this is probably about 10% of your journey. This is about 90% of your journey. If you have ability, then these start to become important. If you don't have ability, then they don't. I mean, essentially, building ability gets you to that 710, 720. Beyond that, these things get you to that 760 over there. So with that, let's kind of talk about accuracy versus ability on the GMAT. And why is it that the way most of you've been studying so far, and the way you need to study for the GMAT is kind of different. So let's talk about accuracy versus ability. And this one chart, the very nature of this exam and what it measures will tell you why the way you study for the GMAT needs to be slightly different. What we're going to do is we're going to compare GMAT attempts or an adaptive test attempt for two different students. Now, this is what I call as a simplistic adaptive test model. It's not the real with the GMAT score, but it outlines the principle that the GMAT uses. So just because I want to keep it a bit more simplistic over here. What you see on the y-axis over here is the difficulty level of questions. What you see on x-axis is question numbers. We have two cases, case 1 and case 2. So case 1 is this blue line, case 2 is that bottom line, which is I think this orangish greenish color. And I'm colorblind, so I always mess up colors, but in the red green segment. But this is case 1 over here, this is case 2 over here. So case 1 or student 1 gets the first question. The first question is of that median or average difficulty level. He gets that question right, gets the next question, which is of a slightly higher difficulty level. How can you see that it's a higher difficulty level? Why? Because we're going higher on the y-axis as we go from question number 1 to question number 2. He gets the second question right. He gets the next question, which is of an even higher difficulty level. He gets that wrong. As a result, he gets the fourth question, which is of a difficulty level between question number 2 and question number 3. How do we figure that out? If you draw straight lines from 2 and 3, you can really see that. Let me just highlight this. Let me just remove this over here. Then he gets the next question, which is of a slightly lower difficulty level, gets question 4 right, gets question 5, which is slightly more difficult, gets that wrong. So that's student 1, and let's kind of assume we stop the test over here for sake of simplicity. Let's now go to case 2. Case 2 gets the first question, which is of a medium difficulty level, gets that wrong, then gets a second question, which is easier, gets that right. It's the third question, which is slightly higher, or it's a bit more difficult, gets that wrong. Gets the fourth question, which is easier, gets that right, and gets the fifth question right as well. Now, if I were to end the test at this point over here at question number 5, who do you think would be doing better? Would it be student 1 or would it be student 2 if we were to end this test over here? Who do you think would be doing better? Student 1 or student 2? And a fairly simple question, and then you can also put down your reasons as to why you think a particular student would be doing better. Why do you think either student 1 would be doing better or student 2 would be doing better? Again, remember, we are ending the test over here. So this is where the test ends. You can type your answers as you press enter. I can. So why? Why do you think student 1 or student 2 would be doing better? All right, let's just broadcast results. 80% of you think student one's doing better. And then let's kind of look at why do you think student one would be doing better? What's the reason overall? Let me broadcast results over here as well. And as you can see, most of you have answered this question correctly. He did questions that were more, he's answered more difficult questions correctly. Now, here's another question that I have. Did student 2 even get the opportunity to answer difficult questions? Was he even served difficult questions? No. He wasn't. Why not? Why not? Why did student 2 not get difficult questions? He didn't have that level, yes. Absolutely. He's not capable as some of, because the algorithm design defined him to be not capable. And this is something which is a really important realization over here. On the GMAT, you really have to earn that right to solve difficult questions. Now, how many more points does a difficult question carry when compared to an easy question? What's the ratio of the number of points that you get from a difficult question versus that from an easy question? You can say AX to B. So, if you want to say 1:2, say 1:2. If you want to say 1:3, 1:3. Easy is to difficult is what we're really talking about. Or the other way around. Let's get a few more data points. 2 to 7, 1:3, 1:3. And yes, it is around that 1:3 mark. Absolutely. Absolutely, that is true. So a difficult question carries 3x as many points as an easy question. So when it comes to the GMAT, there are two things that you need to do. So again, here is a summary of this. One is student A got 5 questions. Each one of them was either at the average difficulty level or the more difficult level. Student 2 only got 1 question that is at the average difficulty level. Someone said, but in practice test, I think it is not measured regarding a wrong question. They're throwing a random set of questions. I think you need to reevaluate how the GMAT works if you're really saying that. No, they don't throw a random set of questions. The algorithm is slightly more sophisticated, Nitin, but hold that question, and in the next 2 slides you're going to see data which that would refute what you just said. But if you really see that a practice test throws a random set of questions at you, then essentially you should not. You should look at how you measure that random set, or B, you should look at the test that you are taking. Okay. So on the GMAT, you have to do 2 things. One is 2 challenges. One is to make sure that you earn the right to get difficult questions served to you. The second thing is to answer them correctly. Okay. Can I explain how the exam works? This is exactly in principle how the exam works. Okay. Now, hold on to those questions such as what if you leave a question unattempted and so on and so forth. We will tackle them later, slightly later. Hold on to those questions. Let's just focus on understanding how the exam works. Now, how is this? How many of you have given the GRE, about the GRE about 5 years back, or have given what we call as the Indian equivalent of the GMAT, which is the CAT, or have studied for the CAT? How many of you have done that? If you've studied for the CAT, or if you've given the GRE, let's just look at this over here. Just answer yes if you've done either one of those things. And the reason I'm saying that is because, or if you're approaching the GMAT the way you approach your school exams, over there. Okay, about 45% of you have done this. So when you understand this, when you look at this over here and you say, okay, this is how the GMAT works, how does it change how you study for the GMAT versus how you studied for the CAT? How does it change? Can you draw an inference based on this? Or if you study for the GRE, no adapt. Yes, that's basically there. The CAT has no adaptive questions. The dynamics of level of difficulty, good. The testing is bilateral. CAT's more formula intensive. CAT's dependent solely based on accuracy. Yes. So when you look at the CAT, which is an Indian entrance exam for B schools, or you look at the GRE, what you have is you have a bunch of questions that are given to you, and these questions are given to you over there. So I'm going to just remove broadcast results just to really now listen to me to really say how does it impact how you study. What you're really saying is facts, not inferences. So on the CAT, what really happens is that you get, let's say, 50 questions, hypothetically speaking, and you have let's say 30 minutes to answer those 50 questions. There's no way you can answer all those 50 questions. So the strategy to get to score the most is to first identify which are the easiest questions, tackle them first, then identify which are the medium difficulty questions, tackle them next, and then if you have time, focus on the hard questions. People who do that get to the highest score. For those of you who've taken the CAT, is that correct? That's how you go about doing this? That's how about, right? That's how you go about doing it. Your strategy is let's figure out the easiest, then the medium, and then the hard, and let's kind of figure out how to answer those quickly. Why? Because it's a test of speed. The Indian version of CAT, and in fact the GRE is also a test of speed in that way. All right. Now, which means that the key skill you need to excel to ace the CAT is the ability to identify which question is easy, which question can you answer really in 30 to 40 seconds, right? That's what you need to do when it comes to the CAT. In fact, on the CAT, the person who tackles the most challenging questions usually is not considered a good test taker. Why? Because why would you tackle the most challenging questions up front when you can get a lot more bang for your buck while tackling easy questions? Am I correct? Right? The CAT is a test of question identification. All right. On the GMAT, if you want to excel on the GMAT, you should not be this easy question should not actually be served to you on the GMAT. Why? Because difficult questions carry 3x as many points, and if you want to get to that 90th percentile, 70% of the questions that you get should be difficult questions over there. So when people study for the CAT, what do? They actually focus on taking mocks. Why? Because they want to learn how to identify questions. Now someone asked the question, how can I leverage my CAT preparation to excel on the GMAT? Actually, because you prepared for the CAT, you have to first throw away that bad habit, which is that I'm going to take a mock test every 3 days to figure out how I'm doing. Why? Because that's not going to work on the GMAT. And that actually is counterproductive on the GMAT. So because you prepared for the CAT from a mindset standpoint, you are at a disadvantage. Yes, the CAT concepts apply to the GMAT. So from that standpoint, you have some ground covered, but from a mindset standpoint, you really need to throw away that mindset first and foremost. The GMAT's a test of ability. The CAT is a test of your test taking skills. It's not a test of ability. Okay. Now, just to really look at this over here in a bit more context. So the key takeaway that you've got to get from this is a GMAT score really is governed by your ability to answer difficult questions correctly. Okay, that's something which you have to take away. Now, why is that important? The reason why that is important is because Let's say you've been studying sentence correction for 6 days. One of the biggest temptations you get is that, hey, I've been studying for sentence correction for 6 days. Let me now move over and study critical reasoning or number properties. Does that happen? Does that happen? You have that temptation to do something different. At that point, you want to tell yourself, unless and until you hit a certain ability in sentence correction, don't move on to number properties or algebra or critical reasoning. Why? Because you want to make sure that you build that ability to answer difficult questions correctly. Only then you move on. Why? Because if you move on after 6 days when you actually need about 9 days, you're going to lose that momentum. You're going to actually lose a lot of the benefit that you've built in because of that 6 days of effort. Okay. Guys, you've been posting some questions in the short answer pod, which is for your responses. If you have a question, please post them in the Q&A pod over here. And sometimes when you post a question, I might not respond to it right away because I have it answered in the upcoming slides. But I would get to it eventually if it's a relevant question. Okay, the Q&A pod is the pod which is right below the slide. Okay, now just to demonstrate this, and for those of you who come from that CAT or GRE background, just look at the data on this. So this is data from what we call as a GMAT prep test, which used to be the official mock exams before they were changed into the official mocks. And the algorithm, the GMAT algorithm, hasn't changed over the last 10 years. So what you see on this is very relevant today. It's actually just as applicable today. What you see is two students. Student number 1, which is the one on the left, has made 9 mistakes. Student number 2 has made 11 mistakes. The delta between these two is just 2 questions, which is these 2 questions over here. Okay. When you think about this, if you look at them from a CAT perspective, you'd really say, hey man, there's really very little difference between these 2 guys, and so they should get very, very similar scores. The reality is very different. The first guy got a V43 on the verbal section of the GMAT, which means the GMAT told him that you are among the top 3 percentile of students worldwide. The second guy got a V32, which is 65th percentile rank, which means he's among the top 70,000 students. If you look at it purely through the lens of accuracy, what you would notice is that, hey, a delta of 2 questions leads to a difference of 64,000 students between them, and you would conclude that the GMAT is a really harsh exam. How many of you, when you look at this data, and this is not an anecdotal case, by the way, I can show you 10 such cases out there. How many of you, when you look at this data, are saying, hey man, the GMAT's a really harsh exam? But 86% of you are coming to that conclusion. Now, here is something which is very interesting. A lot of people look at this and then they're worried about it. What they don't really think is, hey, there are 41 questions and I can make 9 mistakes and still be among the top 3 percentile of students. Right? I mean, 9 out of 41 and still be among the top 3 percentile. I mean, which exam allows you to do that? 9 out of 41. The exam is so forgiving as long as you prove your ability to the test. You can make mistakes on it. Right? Now, this is one view. This is the view that you guys see. This is how you traditionally look at it. This is not how the GMAT looks at these guys. Okay, GMAT doesn't care as much about accuracy. In fact, it cares very little about accuracy. What it cares about is this metric called ability. So this V43 guy, this guy over here, underneath the hood, what the GMAT's measuring is his ability in sentence correction, critical reasoning, and reading comprehension. And he got 95th percentile ability in SC, 95th in CR, and 87th in RC. The V32 guy got 81st percentile in SC, 66th percentile in CR, and 59th percentile in RC. When you look at these two students through this lens of ability, do they look very different? Do they look different? Right? That's the lens through which the GMAT looks at you. There's another conclusion that people really say, says, if I answer the first 2-3 questions wrong, does it mean there is no coming back? No, that's not the case. It actually is not the case, and which is where having that model of the GMAT, it's a very relevant question, by the way, which is where having that model of the GMAT is really important. So I want to kind of look at this accuracy plot. You guys should look at this accuracy plot once more, and then let's go to this model of the GMAT that we had earlier. Okay, let's go back to this model that we had earlier. We're going to focus on student 2. Student 2 got the first question, median difficulty level, got that wrong. Got the second question, which is of a 30th percentile level, which means that's a question that 70% of the questions, 70% of the students answer correctly. He got that wrong as well. Hence, he got the third question, which is of a 15th percentile level, which means a question that 85% of the students answer correctly. He got that right. Got the fourth question, which is of a 25th percentile level. He got that right. Got the fifth question, which was about 35th percentile level. Got that right. Got the seventh question, so our sixth question, around that 45th percentile level. Got the seventh question, 55th. So he actually started getting 700 level questions or difficult questions by 11th or 12th question. And then he started making mistakes again. Student 1, on the other hand, was getting the 700 level questions right by the time he got that question number 5, and then he continued to do well on them. Okay. Had this guy over here, first of all, if you were a 90th percentile guy, you wouldn't make mistakes on a 30th percentile and a 50th percentile question. That's something that doesn't happen. The likelihood, any math whizzes over here, anyone who prides themselves in their probability and the ability to do probabilistic questions? Anywhere? Yes, no? Okay. Tell me, assuming a standard normal model, what's the joint probability that someone whose median likelihood of ability is 90th percentile with a standard deviation of 15 percentile around, what's the joint probability that that guy is going to answer a 50th percentile question wrong and then a 30th percentile question wrong one after the other? What's the joint probability of that if you look at the maximum likelihood model? And for those of you who don't care about probability, this is hardcore math. This has nothing to do with the GMAT. This is what we call as estimation models. If you do the math, the answer would be less than 1 in 10,000. Okay, actually way lower than 1 in 10,000 if you do that math over there. So at this point over here, at question number 3, that question picking thing over here, which is where I talked about this challenge 1, is essentially not very wrong in thinking this guy is not very smart. So hence it increases difficulty level fairly slowly. Now these guys, both of these guys were e-GMAT students from about 4 or 5 years ago. And since these were their mock scores, we also got their actual scores. Student 1, or this guy, on his real GMAT got a V44. Student 2 on his real GMAT got a V35. The point that I'm trying to make is that estimation model that the GMAT uses internally, even if you make a few mistakes here or there, it's ultimately going to get to your real ability. I mean, their actual scores and what they got on that official mocks, they were not very off. Okay, so you can make mistakes on those early questions, you'd still get to round about your ability score, which is kind of what student 2 got to. V32, V35 is kind of within the realm of standard errors. Okay, so again, the takeaway is your GMAT score is governed by your ability to answer difficult questions correctly. Don't start worrying about timing when you're studying for the GMAT. Don't start worrying about which questions to select. Start worrying about what is my ability? Which ability scores do I need to build? What is and start worrying about tracking as you're studying. Am I building that ability? Now the question then is, what abilities does the GMAT measure? So on the GMAT, you have 5 ability scores. So everyone worries about the score out of 800, 740, 750, 760. That score out of 800 is an outcome of a bunch of things that you do. What are those things? So it's composed of your verbal score as well as your quant score, both of which are scored out of 60, which by the way also have a corresponding percentile number out of 100. Now your verbal score is composed of 3 independent abilities, which means you have an independent ability in SCs and CR and RC. Then your quant score is composed of these 2 independent abilities, one each in arithmetic, and then the second in is a combined ability of algebra and geometry. So the beauty of this is, when you think about, let's kind of go over here. The presentation is blank. All right, sorry about that. Let's just go to the next slide. For some reason my presentation is stuck also. Let's just make sure I go through the outline view to the next slide. Okay, let's just give me 1 second, guys. So slide 48. Just give me. Yes. I think this should be good. Can you see the slide which says, so when you think about your GMAT score, ask yourself, what ability scores am I aiming for? And it's still blank. Let me just clear all answers. Can you see the slide? Okay. Okay, let me just do one thing. I'm gonna move this away and I'm gonna clear all answers. Yeah, now it should be gone because I've moved it away, and I want to instantiate it again over here. Now you should be able to see this text which says when you. Perfect. Yeah, resetting fixes web applications as well, not just Windows. All right. So bottom line, which abilities are you aiming for? You're aiming for abilities in SC, CR, RC, arithmetic, and algebra. So you're preparing for the GMAT is actually these 5 individual preparation over here. Okay. All right. Well, I think pretty much everyone can see this now. If a few of you are seeing a blank slide, then I would say just join again. The problem will sort out by itself. Okay. As others can see. So again, remember this takeaway: acing the GMAT is about building ability. All of these other things, they're about 10%. The other 90% is about building ability. Here is some data over here where of a student who went from a V17 to a V40 and a Q44 to a Q48. And what you really see, first thing you really see is his ability scores that helped him get to a V40, which is his 91st percentile overall. And you can, the reason why I have this is you can download this ESR. Okay. Now, someone asked, can you make mistakes in the last questions when questions become difficult? Here is how he trended. This is going from question number 1 to question number 41. Again, this is an old ESR. So when on the verbal section, you had 41 questions instead of 36. But what you see is the GMAT evaluates you in blocks. In the first block, which is where you start with that medium difficulty level, the student proved to the test, that question picking engine, that, hey, I have the ability by answering most of the medium and medium hard questions correctly. In fact, 90% of them correctly. Then the second block, he got a few more challenging questions. He still got most of them correct. Now in the third block, he mostly got difficult questions. And despite the fact that he got half of those questions wrong, but But because those mistakes were made on hard questions, he was still able to get to a V40, which is 91st percentile on GMAT verbal. Okay. So the question then really is, how many of you know your starting abilities in these 5 subsections? Let me just put in a yes no poll. How many of you know your starting abilities in SCCR and RC, arithmetic and algebra? Select a yes no question over here. How many of you know that okay, this is my ability in SC, my ability in CR, my ability in RC, my ability in arithmetic, my ability in algebra? For those of you who know this, or who don't know this, I'm going to share the link to our Sigma X mock. This is the world's only mock that gives you these ability scores. It gives you 5 ability scores. The only other way to get these ability scores is to take the actual GMAT, which is where you spend $250, then spend another $30 to get your enhanced score report and get these ability scores. There's no other mock test in the world, including the official mock test, that will give you these ability scores. Only the official test and the Sigma X mock. Now, for those of you who need help creating that personalized study plan, we also have a few slots available to create that personalized study plan over here. So if you click on this link, you can see how we've helped students create their personalized study plan, and you can book a slot. We have, I think, about 20 odd slots available, and I see about 207 students here in the webinar over here. So with that, let's kind of talk about what is that personalized study plan and why do you need one. Okay. And so here is my first question over here. Let me hide this. Let me hide this. So what does a study plan do? When you think of a study plan, what role does it play? What does the study plan do? Okay, save time and effort, do some triggering, I don't know what, smaller goals. Okay, effectiveness, builds your ability. Okay, keeps track of your progress, implements a strategy. Dev and Dhanashri, please in the short answer poll, not in the Q&A pod. Q&A pod is for your questions. If you fill this up, we can't see your questions, then they don't get answered. Okay, improves your skill in a time-effective manner. Good responses overall. Now, I'm going to tell you what, in my opinion, does a study plan do, and then you can tell me if you like my answer better than yours. Okay, so read what others have said, and then tell me in about 20 minutes or about 15 minutes if you like my answer. Okay, so your study plan at a very high level answers 3 questions. First is this question of how will I reach my target GMAT score, which means there are about 30 ways to get to a score of 740. Which path am I going to take? Which path is the most efficient one for me to get to that target GMAT score? It's really important to decide which path you take. Why? Because, you know, whether you realize it or not, each one of you is going to find it difficult difficult to get time to study for the GMAT. So time is going to be your most precious commodity. How many of you over here today are struggling for time to really say, man, I want to ace the GMAT. I don't think I have enough study time. My work takes precedence all the time. How many of you struggle with time today? How many of you struggle with time today? 65 hours a week or more, right? A lot. So the first thing that a study plan does is it actually creates a path that is most efficient for you to get to that target GMAT score. Okay. The second thing that it does is that it tells you where to put in that time. So it gives you a good path. It then tells you, okay, once it creates that path, it gives you a really good estimate of how much time you actually need. If you go to our YouTube channel, or if you read our close to 2,000 reviews on GMAT Club, or click on go to share GMAT experience and read success stories, what you're going to find is there are a few people on our who get to their target GMAT score in about 20 days. There are a few that take 2 months, and there are others that take 4 months. Now, it doesn't mean that, hey, those who got to their target score in 20 days were incredibly efficient, versus whereas those who took 4 months were incredibly inefficient. More typically, the reality is those who take 4 months needed those 4 months, versus those who got there in 20 days. They only had those many gaps that they could do that in 20 days or so. Okay. So getting that right time estimate is really important. We get about 30 emails. So we get about 1,000 customers every month, and we get about 30 emails, which means about 30 emails a day, where people are asking for help with this. And a few emails that we get really say, I have been studying for 5 months, I've not been able to improve. I have my exam in 30 days. I'm at a 600. Can you help me get to a 740? But I have about 200 students here. I think some of you probably have written to us with this kind of a message, and we understand the desperation. But again, if you've been studying for 5 months and you've not made a whole lot of progress, assuming that magic will happen in 30 days is actually not the right expectation. You've got to, and what we tell them is, you've got to figure out how long you will take given the time commitment you can put in, and then we can tell you when can we help you get to that 740 score. And we have means to do that, which is where what those people do. And then the last piece, probably the most important piece in all of this, is where do you put in that time? You create an efficient path, you figure out how long you need, but if you spend that time on wrong things, you're not going to get to that target score. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 case studies to demonstrate what a good study plan does. And again, let me just clear all answers over here. So if you, for those of you who want to write to me, you can write to me at rajat@e-GMAT. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. So if you're not in the US, you probably don't want to call to me, but we don't work with phone calls. We rather work with Zoom calls, where we see you, where we can hear you, where we can show you how you're going to get to that high GMAT score. Okay. So schedule a session and have a dedicated one-on-one mentor session. So we're going to look at 2 students. Both of them, we're going to call them Abby and Chase. Both of them have a starting score of 600. Now, Abby has more balanced score. She's at a Q42 and a V31, and Chase is a quant whiz. This guy is at a Q49 and a V23. Now, let's kind of look at this. Who's Abby over here, and who's Chase? Actually, hold on. Let me bring in my poll question. Here is the poll question. Who do you associate with? Is it Abby or is it Chase? And associate more with. You might not associate exactly with Abby or exactly with Chase, but who is more balanced quant and verbal scores? If you are that, you're more like Abby. If you have highly unbalanced quant and verbal scores, then you are more like Chase. Okay, that's good. You can see, but we have about a 50-50 split over there. Let me hide this poll. Okay, so again, remember, you've got to get those starting abilities. And to make things easier, what I've done is I've tried to keep those starting abilities very, very similar. So for Abby, her starting ability is around that 42nd percentile. And this just happens to be that Q42 is around that 42nd percentile today. It doesn't directly translate to 42nd percentile. And on the verbal side, Abby is at that 60th percentile, round about that. Now Chase, on the other hand, is at a Q49, which is around that 72nd percentile. And on verbal, he's around that 35th percentile. Again, It could be widely different. It's just I wanted you guys to keep around about 5 numbers in your mind or write down these 5 numbers. So that's why I kind of equalize the verbal abilities for across the 3 subsections as well as the quant abilities across the 2 subsections. Okay. Now, if you're Abby and you're Chase, the answer to each of these 3 questions is no. They're not going to aim for the same quant and verbal scores to achieve at 740. They will not need the same amount of time to get to quant and verbal, and they will not need to study the same content. Okay, so how do you figure out how much effort you need? You actually put all of this data in an AI-driven tool that we created a year and a half back called a personalized study planner. And you put that data in, you input how much time you need, it creates that personalized study plan for you. Okay, so let's see how this works. And what you see on the screen are screenshots from that tool. So it takes into account Abby's scores, score of 600, Q42, V31, and these are her abilities in quant and verbal. If you can't read them, you have them from the prior slide. It then tells Abby, okay, Abby, for you, the best way to get to that 740 is a Q48 and a V42, which means you've got to improve your quant ability from that 42nd percentile to that 65th percentile, and your verbal abilities, you have to go from that 60th percentile to that around that 90th or an SC to that 94th percentile. It then creates that study plan where it says that, hey, Abby, you need to study about 2 weeks you need to put in about 2 weeks of dedicated effort in SC, in CR, and in RC, and about 1.5 weeks of dedicated effort each in arithmetic and algebra geometry. Now, if you were Abby and prior to using this tool, you would have thought Abby would need to spend more time in quant than in verbal, but that's not the case, and that's the beauty of creating that strategy. Her strategy is verbal driven, which means that she's going to leverage her strengths. She's going to spend about 6 weeks total in verbal and about 3 weeks in quant to get to that 740 score. Okay. Now let's talk about Chase. You can see Chase over here. Again, the same starting score, 600, but very different quant and verbal scores. He puts in the same information, and what the tool says is, hey Chase, you need to get to that Q50 and a V41. Now, there's a very important piece over here. Most people would think if you're at a Q49, you would want to go for a Q51. Why? Because that's how you maximize your quant score. The tool recognizes, because it has AI built in it, that a Q51 is a highly unlikely scenario. A couple of mistakes can throw you off from a Q51. So unless and until it reaches a certain threshold on verbal, it would not recommend a Q51. Why? Because it always wants to make sure you get to that 740 score. So hence it says a Q50 and a V40 or so, where you can see the different abilities. Okay, so at that point, where does Chase spend his time? He spends about 2 weeks on quant overall, if that, and then he spends about 3 weeks on each subsection in verbal. So he spends a total of about 9 weeks in verbal over here. What you also see is a sequence of execution for Chase, where he starts with that score of 600. As he improves his quant, as you hover over it, it will tell you how that's the extent of score improvement that Chase achieves as he hits each of these milestones overall. By the way, how many of you, while preparing for the GMAT, prepared a milestone-driven plan? By the way, if you're an e-GMAT student, you probably did. But if you're not an e-GMAT student, how many of you prepared such a study plan? If you're not an e-GMAT student. If you're an e-GMAT student, you probably would have done it. But if you're not an e-GMAT student, you probably would not. And here is where the data you can really see, but 80% of you have not. But given the architecture of the GMAT, does it make sense? I mean, does the plan make absolute logical sense? Right? If those 5 abilities actually make up your target GMAT score, then that's how you should be approaching. Okay. Now, what does this mean for Abby and Chase? And this is where you want to do a differential diagnosis over here. Okay. Chase wants to get to that V40 and Q50. Abby wants to get to that V42 and Q48. Now, they may seem very similar scores, but in reality, a Q50 and a Q48 are two very different students. A V40 and a V42 are distinctly different students. But that's not the biggest piece. The biggest piece is to get to a V40, Chase needs to spend 9 weeks, which is 50% more time than Abby needs to get to a V42. To get to a Q50, Chase only needs about 1.5 weeks, whereas Abby needs twice as much time to get to a Q48. Remember, they both started at the same score. Now tell me, if you actually needed 9 weeks to finish a task and you estimated 6 weeks, what would it do to how you approach that task? If you needed 9 weeks to approach to finish a task, but you were given 6 weeks, how would it affect the quality of your output? You'll skip some tasks, you'll go through it. And on a test such as the GMAT, what would that result in? Where your ability is governed by, your score is governed by your ability to answer difficult questions correctly. It'll lead to bad prep. You will not hit that 750 score, or 740 score, and pretty much those 6 weeks that you put in, most of that time will be wasted. You would not get the benefit of it. Some of you are asking, how can you figure out your starting ability? And you're asking for a link to that Sigma X mock. Here is a link to that Sigma X mock over here. So which can give you your starting scores. Okay. Some of you are also asking for that study plan link. So that you can register for it. Here is where you can register for that study plan. But that's not the biggest difference. Okay. The biggest difference is, what do they learn? Where do they spend their time? I have a few students who asked me, who said, what are good mock tests? Where can I get hard practice questions? One thing you've got to recognize is, just practicing will not help you get to the target score. The GMATs are very different beast than your school exams. Okay, so let's talk about ability versus the kind of activities that you do. This is the model that we follow within e-GMAT, and this is the model that has helped us deliver the kind of success that no other prep company has even come close to delivering. Okay, so what you see over here are 4 stages of learning and 1 stage of maintenance over here, or making sure that you get to that. So if you know the concepts, and a lot of people say this, hey, I know the concepts, I just I'm not able to get to a high GMAT score. Yes, knowing the concepts doesn't do a whole lot of good, because the GMATs are test of application. So knowing the concepts gets you to that 25th percentile. Once you learn how to apply concepts in a consistent fashion, that's when you get to that 50th percentile. Now, when you master that application, which means you get efficient at applying those concepts and efficient at applying all of those steps, that's when you get to that 70th percentile. Now, even at this point, you have certain gaps, which is where, when you use data-driven feedback and fix those gaps, which is what we call as refined to perfection, that's when you get to that 90th percentile. This is that 750, 760 stage. And then you've got to maintain performance as you go this from one subsection to the other. So you've got to go through these stages for every subsection. So you've got to do this for SC independently, for CR independently, for NP independently, for algebra independently, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's really important. So now that we have this model for stages of learning, and let me erase this So you guys can look at this model. Learn concepts, learn application, master application, refine to perfection, and maintain performance. The kind of activities, by the way, that you do at each stage are very different. At which stage do you think you need to practice? At which stage do you think practice actually has an impact? At which of these stages do you think practice has an impact? Good. After mastering application. You don't master concepts. Mastering concepts is the first stage. After mastering application, that's when practice has an impact. However, how many of you over here are stuck at 70th percentile? How many of you over here stuck at 70th percentile, or V33, V34, or Q47? Okay. How many of you out of those who are stuck have practiced a ton of questions? How many of you have practiced and said, man, I've exhausted GMAT club. I just don't seem to improve. Okay, lots of you. Me, I see that. The thing which is there is the journey between this and this is not pure practice. It is where you do something called a strategic review. And we will see an example of that strategic review in about 15 minutes or so. Okay. So just blind practice will not help you anywhere on the GMAT. Just collecting hard questions is not going to help you get there. And we've seen enough of those stories. Now let's go back to Abby and Chase. And this is Abby. And you see her starting percentiles. So given the fact that Abby is at around that 60th percentile, where do you think Abby would be spending the 2 weeks that she needs to spend on SC? Where do you think Abby needs to spend time? No, which stage? Learn concepts and application, master application, refine to perfection, or maintain? Master application. She's already at that 60th percentile. So Abby, when it comes to verbal, is going to focus on mastering application. She's not going to go back and learn concepts. She couldn't have been at 60th percentile without knowing the concepts. So she's going to focus primarily on mastering that application and refining to perfection over there. Now, on the quant side, where she's at 42nd percentile, she needs to learn concepts and application, and then she needs to master application. She doesn't need to refine to perfection or focus on a whole lot of maintenance, because quant is what she'll likely be doing towards the end. Now, when you look at this chart, if Abby were an e-GMAT student, I wouldn't ask her to learn concepts given her scores. I would really say, hey, in our learning part, focus on the application files only, and then go to Scholaranium. Which is why, can you really see why Abby only needs 2 weeks in sentence correction, whereas Chase needs 3 weeks? Can you see that? Why? Because Abby doesn't have to do any of this. Can you see that? Yes, no? Is the audio not clear still? Is the audio clear? Now it's fine. Okay. Okay. I was actually sitting on the mic cable. Maybe that's why it got loose. All right. Audio. Is the audio okay? Yes or no? Perfect. Okay. Coming back to what we were talking about. Can you see how learning concepts would be a wastage of time for Abby? Because she's already at that 60th percentile. She cannot be at that 60th percentile if she doesn't know the concepts. Okay. Now, yeah, I mean, you can't be, right, at that 60th percentile if you don't know the concepts. Maybe she lacks some, yes, there is a possibility that in a few concepts she might lack, but that's where, while she is mastering application, a good analytics system will help you do that. And that's the beauty of having a good analytics system. Okay. Now, where do you think Chase would spend his time? He's starting at that 34th percentile over here. Learn concepts and application. Yes, Chase is going to spend time in learning concepts and application, and then mastering application, and then finally going into refine to perfection. That's going to be on the verbal side. On quant, he's only going to spend time in maintaining and refining to perfection, which is where he's going to go from that Q49 to the Q50 score over here. Now remember this. Does this still seem like a lot of detail? Does this seem like a lot of detail? Yes, no? Does this seem like a lot of detail? Okay. Useful detail though, right? This is something you've got to do. There's a lot of detail that I'm not actually talking about right now, which is to say, okay, how do you figure out where in algebra or where in arithmetic and where in algebra is Chase going to spend time? That's where analytics comes in. Okay, but at a very high level, if you are Chase, you've got to say, if I'm building my study plan, that's all I'm going to focus on, refine to perfection, but on the quant side. But on the verbal side of things, I've got to start from the basics. Okay. The takeaway for you is, even though they're aiming for that same 740 score, even though they're starting from that same 600 score, their path to that 740 score, how much time they need, and what they're going to study, it's going to be very different for them. And if at the onset, if they don't make that distinction, they're going to spend time studying the wrong things, which means they're going to take a lot longer to get to that high score, or half, most of the people who are like Abby and Chase, if they make those wrong decisions, they won't even get there. Either they're going to take years rather than, getting there in a couple of months. 600 to 740 is about 2 months to 2 months and 20 days. Or they're going to take multiple attempts, wasting time and energy. Okay. You've got to experience this level of personalization. If you go to our success stories, you're going to really see some of those success stories where people bought our course, prepared by themselves, didn't even write to us. They scored 710, 720, and they said, man, I'm really happy with that. And then they wrote to us and said, hey, we told them, are you willing to put in 20 more days? And we helped them improve from a 710, 720 to a 760, 20 more days. The reason why we can do this is because we have the data, which means we can personalize this study plan. Same student, it's not getting to that 750, 760 is not about intelligence, it's about diligence. Because what we are doing over here is not rocket science. What we are doing over here is a very logical thought process. Isn't this pretty much intuitive? Yes, it is. So is business. Yet we go to a B school, yet 90% of you have not approached building your study plan like this. If you think about most of the concepts in the world, I mean, you'd say what Newton did was fairly intuitive as well. An apple fell, he figured out that it has to be because of gravity, right? Yet it took humanity 5,000 years to get to that point, and still the church didn't believe him. Right? If you believe history to be correct. But in the end, it was fairly intuitive. Right, Siddharth? Okay. So if you're an e-GMAT student, you should have these things. If you don't have these things, if you don't, because the moment you build your study plan, we educate you on these stages of learning. If you don't have these things, write to the support team. We do 2 weekly onboarding sessions each week. If you, depending on which stage of learning, you should have a session going on, and make sure you do that. And make sure you have, we have about 30 videos that guide you through each and every stage. So within learn concepts and methods, within master application, we have videos around strategic review and all of these things that should pop up in your screen as you get to those stages. If you've dismissed those videos, write to our CSC team, they'll get those to you. Okay, but get that guidance if you don't have it. If you're not an e-GMAT student, take that Sigma X mock test, figure out those starting abilities. Again, I'm going to share that link once again, and then schedule a session with one of our strategy experts to if there are slots of open, that is, and get that mapping of that journey to that 740 plus score. What's the support team? You can write to me, or you can write to support@e-GMAT, or you can write to Rajat@e-GMAT, and the support team will get to you. So if the link's not appearing for you, I'm going to launch this link for a couple of you over here. Also the same thing with Sigma X mock, so you can bookmark these 2 links. All right. So with that, let's now get to how do you build ability? Now that we know where should you study and so on and so forth over here. Okay. Joe says, how much time should you set aside if you want to get to a 700 plus score? But I'm really weak in quant. Joe, take a Sigma X mock. We'll give you precise estimates. I mean, why do you, I hate guessing is what I would say. I hate to be wrong. I hate guessing. I'm a very data-driven person, and in each GMAT, we have a very data-driven culture. So take a Sigma X mock, or give us your mock scores, and then we can give you an estimate with an 80+% confidence level. If you take a Sigma X mock, we can get to that 90+% confidence level. Okay. So let's kind of revise what we've done so far. The first thing that we've learned is if you want to get to that 730 or higher score, if you want to get to that top B school and get that fellowship. Second thing is GMAT is a test of ability. And to ace the GMAT, you've got to build ability. The third thing is to get there efficiently, to get there with certainty, you need that PSP or personalized study plan, because it creates an efficient path. It allocates during that path the relevant amount of time that you need, and it makes sure that you focus on the right stage of learning. And then what are those stages of learning? You have 4 stages of learning: learning concepts, learning application, mastering application, and refinement to perfection, and then 1 stage of what we call as retention or maintaining your performance. Okay. The key thing over here is we've got to understand, depending on which stage you are in, you have to focus on different activities. Also, the intensity level has to be very different at each stages. When you're purely learning concepts, I would say you can learn them at about 70% intensity, which is kind of the lowest intensity that you need. But once you get to these 3 stages, you have to be at that 90% intensity level. Now, the hardest part to keep your intensity level that high is at mastering application and learning application. Once you cross mastering application, refining to perfection just requires primarily that you have a focused approach, you do that strategic review, and you do it consistently. Okay. So let's kind of do a yes no test over here. How many of you have, let's talk about sentence correction over here, and only those if you've spent about 35 hours learning SC. How many of you are stuck at the 60th percentile despite spending 30 hours in sentence correction, or 65th or 70th percentile? Round about that. Okay. All right. Let me end the poll. About 70% of you. Now, I'm going to talk about why is it that people get stuck at that 70th percentile over there. Just to really show some stats, so if you're stuck at that 60th percentile, which means you are among the top 80,000 people who take the GMAT. A 60th percentile student spends about 40 hours learning SC. Starting ability is about 30th percentile, which is, prior to spending those 40 hours, you were at about 30th percentile and has the capability to get to that 90th percentile. 60th percentile means you're among the top 80,000 people who take the GMAT. A 90th percentile student means that you're among the top 20,000 people who take the GMAT, about 200k people who take the GMAT every year on an average. Again, spends a very similar number of hours studying for it, has a very similar starting score and a similar overall capability. Now, the reason why I'm doing this, when I'm presenting this data in a very distinct fashion, is to really tell you there's really no difference between the extent of effort put in by these two students and their overall capability. Where the difference comes from is mindset. And someone's asking what accuracy reads for 60th percentile. If you're asking that question, you probably didn't understand the first part of the webinar, where GMAT's not a test of accuracy. Okay. Now, 90th percentile is about getting to that level of perfection. 90th percentile is about iteration. 90th percentile is about having the mindset which is very different from that of a 60th percentile. Again, remember this, all of these points are identical, yet the mindset's very different. Let's talk about how a 60th percentile student thinks about GMAT SC. A 60th percentile student looks at GMAT SC and says, hey, GMAT SC is about knowing the concepts in SV, verbs, pronouns, modifiers, parallelism, comparison, and meaning. And then a 60th percentile student says, hey, I'm going to focus on an SC question. I'm going to focus at it with regards to splits. If I see splits, I'm going to figure out, narrow it down, and then I'm going to focus on meaning if I need to. If I don't need to focus on meaning, I'm not even going to worry about it. 60th percentile students, does that sound like how you think about SC? SC is about these square error types. Yes, no? Let's just look at this. No? Okay, I'm going to share a question with you and see how many of you get it right. Here is what else you really see. A 60th percentile student, when it comes to those 40 hours, spends about 12 to 15 to 18 hours learning. So 30% of that time is spent on learning and 70% of that time is spent on practicing questions. How many 60 percentile students in SC do that? Have spent more than half their time in practicing questions. Let's refresh this poll once again. Okay, and you can really see why you're at 60th percentile. In fact, practicing questions is counterintuitive. It's the same 40 hours. A 90th percentile student doesn't think of SC as a test of 8 major error types. A 90th percentile student thinks of SC in terms of sentence structures, which are 200 major sentence structures that tests these concepts. So he considers sentence structures and these concepts to be a matrix, and there are about 200 different inputs in those matrix. Some of you, in fact, quite a few of you would really say, okay, man, I have 8 over here and I have 200. This is not even comparable. Rajat is making things very complex. How many of you are thinking that? 200 is too many. It's really complex. Okay. From a pure number standpoint, yes, it is. From an actual application standpoint, this is way easier. And I'm going to demonstrate it to you. But keep that complex thought process in your mind for the next 5 minutes or so, because after that, I'm going to dispel that myth. But it's good that you have that. A 90th percentile student uses meaning as the primary method to solve. For him, meaning is not an error type. The number of feedback points that he gets while learning or she gets while learning is 10 times as many, between 80 to 120 feedback points. The 90th percentile student spends about 60% of his time learning and 40% of his time practicing. When you look at points 3 and 4, actually, all of these points are very different, but when you look at points 3 and 4, can you see a very different kind of learning architecture for the 60th percentile versus the 90th percentile student? Let's see why that is the case. And to do this, what I'm going to do is kind of share a question with you fairly soon. Okay. The thing that I want you to ask yourself post you solve that question is that there are GMAT SC tests about 200 sentence structures. How can you achieve perfection or achieve that 90th percentile if you only get feedback 7 to 10 times while learning? The other thing is, you get these few feedbacks, then what does that tell you about how well you've learned? How can you use that feedback to improve? And the third thing is, what's your methodology of perfection? Are you just learning all the concepts at once and then practicing questions to perfect? Or are you perfecting those concepts while you're learning them? Keep these questions in mind. And just to kind of summarize with regards to how many feedback points that do we provide when you learn concepts over here, we give you about 75 personalized feedback points. When you learn application, you get 23 personalized feedback points. When you master application, which is where you go into a Scholaranium platform, you get about 30 to 50 personalized feedback points. And then we have our mocks over here. And the thing which is there is we analyze at least 5 assessments for each feedback point. So when you look at these 100 plus feedback points, each one of them has 5 independent assessment items to it. Okay. And the reason why this is really important is because when you have 5 assessments and we get your score, we have a lot more confidence when we tell you that you've mastered a concept or when we tell you that you have not mastered a concept. And that's really important. That level of confidence is really important. Why? Because bad feedback leads to bad direction leads to time wastage leads to you not scoring well. Okay. So we're going to solve an SC question, and I want you to solve this SC question using the method that you typically use. So the way I go about doing this is, let's go back. I don't want to time you guys. So I want you to choose this answer choice that says still solving. About 70 of you to choose the still solving. And that way, when you choose an answer choice other than still solving, I will call time. So I won't time you as a group, but you yourself will time you guys as a group. So still solving. Let's get to about 60 people saying still solving. I have 35, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44, 50, 54. Let's get to about 60 people saying still solving. 56, 57, 58. I need 60 people to say still solving before I show the question. If you can't see the question because enough people haven't said still solving. Again, I want to get a representative number. 2 more people to say still solving before I show. Good. Here is your question, and let me narrow down the answer choices. Now you guys should be able to see the question. Good luck, guys. I'm going to mute myself. All right, last 15 seconds, get those answers in. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll and broadcast the results. What do you see is a good number of you gravitated towards choice C. We have a few folks in choices A and B, but choice C is really popular, choice D is quite popular, and choice E is also popular. So let's see which one's the correct answer. Let me hide this over here and let me get my short answer poll back. All right. So what splits exist in this question? Or were you guys able to find any splits? What splits existed in this question? There weren't very many splits there. Let me just share this. So here is a, you say, okay, there is while and then there is but over here. Say the church coined, and then there's but over here in these answer choices. This one doesn't have but, this one has but, this one has but, and then you have while over here, you have while over here, and then you have the church, and you have the church over here, and then you have that over here. So there's lots and lots of different ways to slice and dice this. Okay, how many of you really said, okay, I'm going to look at this and say, figure out whether but is correct or whether we don't need it, and whether while is correct or whether the church is correct? How many of you looked at this and approached it this way? Just a yes or no. How many of you approached it this way? Yes or no? I'm going to remove broadcast results. Three, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll, broadcast the results. 32%, and first of all, I applaud you guys for answering this question. Why? Because it can be daunting when an instructor asks, how many of you approached it? But for those of you who like to take up a challenge, for those of you who are going to get to that 740 score, would dare to take this challenge up, and you can really say, hey, and it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong. What matters is that you dare. That 32% of you approached it this way, and 68% of you did not. Now, those 32% who did approach us this way, why do you think, someone who's going to go for an MBA needs to learn about splits? What does learning about splits have to do with making complex business decisions? Or what does this kind of pattern recognition where humans can never be superior to computers, what does that have to do with running $100 million business? What does that have to do? Any response? Break down the information to make but the thing is, as computers do a way better job than you guys do, right? So figuring out what splits exist is kind of what a computer would do. Why would you pay someone 150 grand to figure out what splits exist? Understand the information accurately. All right, let's look at that and see. Conscious presence of mind, being able to articulate effectively. Good. So this is where what you need to do. Now let's look at whether splits help you do this. Let's figure that out. Okay. If you followed the splits methodology, you likely got this question wrong. Frankly, most difficult SC questions cannot be solved using this methodology. If you attend our session next Saturday, I'm going to demonstrate multiple examples. So let's look at this question and solve it using the meaning-based approach. over there, which Pyle Tandon, who's my co-founder, she actually invented this approach. We're on the third iteration of this approach, and this is the approach that pretty much every test company is trying to follow right now. So let's look at this. The church coined the date February 14 as Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercilia over here. Okay, let's kind of look at this over here. The church coined. So when you look at this sentence, you divide it, you really see there are a few things that are going on in this sentence. So the church did something, it coined this date, and with a certain kind of motive, with an ulterior motive. What was the motive? The motive was to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercilia, and that part is claimed by a few experts. But then the author says, but it is celebrated to this day. So the reason why it's celebrated is to honor Valentine's death or burial, and that part is the more prevalent belief. So among the two beliefs, this part is the more prevalent belief. So when you think about this sentence, there are two claims about the celebration of February 14 as Valentine's Day. Claim 1 is that church designated it with a specific motive, and claim 2 is that it is really done to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. And then the third aspect, which you have to extract from the original choices, that both claim 1 and claim 2 are by different entities. Claim 1 is by a few experts. Claim 2 is the more prevalent belief. Another aspect that you have to extract out of this is that the author has no opinion about this, whether which claim is true. He's really merely communicating information. Read the sentence, and can you see how we've gotten these three aspects of meaning that the author wants to communicate from the original sentence? Can you see this? Read the original sentence, read 1, 2, and 3. Okay. These are the three aspects that you should have extracted before looking at the answer choices, before even thinking about what's wrong with this sentence. So what is it that I want to communicate? I as the business leader, I as the author, what is it that I want to communicate? Now tell me, when you were solving this question, which aspect were you unable to figure out? Let me just do this. Which aspect were you unable to figure out? Could you not identify? And this is a multiple response question, so you can choose more than one. Which aspect could you not identify while you were solving this question? Now, why is it that we need to extract these aspects? Why? Because this meaning needs to be maintained by the correct answer. If you change the meaning, you're killing the purpose of the sentence. Okay, meaning first, grammar next. Grammar is a tool to communicate meaning. Okay, as you can really see, most people didn't get aspect 3. There are a few of you who didn't get aspect 2, and then a few of you who didn't get aspect 1. Let me end the poll over here. How many of you are wondering, how do these play a role in selecting the correct answer? How many of you are really scratching your head and saying, man, I don't know how I'm going to use it to get to the correct answer? How many of you are wondering about this? Okay. All right, quite a few of you are. Let's kind of look at this over here. We already did this. Here's the takeaway. If you were able to understand and extract all three while solving the question, you know the meaning well enough, you can move forward, figure out what errors are. But if you missed either one of these, if you missed one, if you missed two, then you've got to figure out how to extract various aspects from the sentence. So let's carry on with this approach. Let's figure out the errors over here. And one thing which you would really see is these highlighted verbs in red, they don't have subject. This sentence has a subject verb error. What is claimed by a few experts? We don't know. Why? Because this subject, the church, is mated to this coin. it is made it to is celebrated, but is claimed and this is, they don't have corresponding subjects. Okay. Now that we know what is it that we want to communicate, and now that we know what is it that what are the errors, let's kind of look at various choices. And let me share the poll results with you over here. This is how you guys polled, so you can see the answer choice that you chose over here. Okay. While with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, a few experts do claim that the church coined the date February 14. Now, this one, remember this, the original sentence is over here. And the original sentence, okay, who had the ulterior motive? That was the church that had the ulterior motive. In sentence 2, who has, in choice B, who has the ulterior motive? That's a few experts. Now the ulterior motive has shifted this over here to a few experts, which is why choice B is wrong. Okay. Okay. Also, it fails to capture the motive that the church had. While with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration, a few experts do claim that the church coined the term this thing. So the church's ulterior motive is gone. Now the experts have this ulterior motive. Can you see how this meaning is distorted in choice B? Can you see? It's shifted the blame. In the original sentence, the church had the ulterior motive. Now the experts have the ulterior motive. Okay. Now let's get to choice C, the most popular choice, and which is not the correct choice. While a few experts claim that the church coined the date February 14 as blah 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 with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, their more prevalent belief. Who does their correspond to over here? Who does their correspond to here? The same set of experts. Is that what we wanted to communicate in the original sentence? That's a massive change in meaning. Remember, claim 1 was by a few experts. Claim 2 was by another set of people, and it's the most prevalent belief. It's a huge meaning change. A lot of people say, man, I love how this sentence is constructed. There's nothing grammatically wrong in this sentence, but it doesn't communicate the meaning that the author intended to communicate. Okay, why? Because it illogically suggests, not grammatically illogical. Independently, there's nothing wrong with this sentence. Okay, but in the context of our original choice, it changes the meaning drastically. People who chose choice C, can you see this? Which grammar book teaches you this? Which grammar, you open any grammar book, will it teach you this piece? No. A grammar book will not teach you. This is not grammar, this is meaning. And this is the GMAT. Okay, let's look at choice D over here. The church coined the date February 14 as Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, as claimed by a few experts. But its celebration on this date is to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial, the more prevalent belief. Now, in the original choice, is the author making any claims by himself, or is the author merely communicating information? Is he merely communicating information, or is he making any claim? He's just communicating information. What's happening over here? The author is communicating information as well as making the claims. And if you want to understand the distinction, let me just show 2 simple sentences to you. Apple is the market leader is claimed by Forbes magazine. If you if you write the sentence, are you communicating information? Yes. Are you making a claim here? No. Should you be blamed if it turns out that Apple is not the market leader? Absolutely not. Why? Because all you're really saying is there's something XYZ. This part is claimed by Forbes magazine. You're just communicating information, which means you can't be blamed. Take a look at this sentence. Apple is the market leader is claimed by Forbes magazine. You're merely communicating information. Can you see this? Can you see this? Right? Now let's look at this sentence. Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine. What are you doing here? You're communicating information. You're supporting that the claim by Forbes as well. So you are making that claim too. Okay. Should you be blamed if it turns out that Apple is not a market leader? Yes, you should be. Because you said Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine. And you use this every day. If you really say, hey, Harvard is the best business school as stated by Business Week. You're putting your weight behind Harvard is the best business school, but you're really kind of also saying that Business Week also states that. No, they're not the same thing. They are not. And that's what you need to understand over here. When you say Apple is the market leader is claimed by Forbes magazine, you're really saying that you're merely communicating information. You can't be blamed. When you say Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine, you're really telling people Apple is the market leader. I agree with it. Let's kind of take another sentence. A slightly different sentence over here. And I think this would be much easier. Okay. In this, are you making a recommendation? Gartner recommends that we should invest in AI. Are you making a recommendation? No, not at all. You can't be blamed. You're simply saying Gartner recommends that we should invest in AI. What about sentence 2? Are you making a recommendation? Yes, you are. If you invest in AI and it screws up, who's to blame? You. And as a leader, you need that clarity when you communicate. Why? Because the sentence you write will be read by 1,000 people. And they'll make their own inferences from it. And this is a big thing that's tested in RC. In RC, what's the answer to an inference question? The answer to an inference question is what the author believes in, not what someone else believes in. Choice D is wrong. Why? Because it puts both the claims on the author as well. What it says is the author believes in both the claims. Claim 1, that the church designated is the structure of it makes you believe that the church coined the date with an ulterior motive as claimed by a few experts, means the author believes in it and a few experts also believe this. But its celebration on this day is to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial, the most prevalent belief. What you're really saying is the author also believes in this second claim. In the original answer choice, did the author believe in any of this? No. In this answer choice, does the author believe in both? Yes. In both the claims, you now have the author backing them. Okay. The correct answer is choice E. Choice E keeps the original meaning, corrects the error. That the church coined February 14 as Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia is claimed. So what is claimed? That is claimed. You add the subject over here. But the more prevalent belief is it is celebrated on this day to honor Valentine's death or burial. Is claimed to also backed by author in choice D? Yes, it is. It is backed. Okay. Choice E maintains your original meaning, corrects both the errors over here. Okay. Now, why is it that people reject the choice E? Let me just clear all answers over here. Why is it that people reject choice E? Because they really say, hey man, you have a sentence that's starting with that, I'm going to reject it right away. How many of you did that? It starts with the pronouns, I'm going to reject it right away. Why? What's wrong with that? Where did you hear that is? What are parallel paths? What are parallel things? What's the purpose of parallelism on grammar? What's the purpose of parallelism? Balance in sentence? No. Balance. Why would you need balance? Yes, it should convey ideas clearly. Yes. Parallelism is about conveying ideas clearly. There's only one thing that is required in parallelism. That the parallels, the list needs to be a logical list. You can't compare entities and actions. Now, by virtue of the list being a logical list, it just so happens that in most of the forms, you have, an ing word along with an ing word. Because that's how we express an action in most of the instances. But there are cases where people where you have verb ed and verb ing forms as parallel. Here is an article that we wrote in 2013, I believe, or 2012, where we talked about imperfect lists. Okay, 2012. How many of you actually start with this thing that, okay, yeah, verb ed modifier and verb ing, they can be parallel. A lot of people think, but it is celebrated on this date. But the more prevalent belief is there is a that missing over here. You don't need that. That always needs to be used. It doesn't always need. It's not wrong if you use it, but if you omit it, it's not wrong either. Why? Because it still communicates the right meaning. A lot of people live in this world with misconceptions. Another misconception that people live with is being is wrong in GMAT SC. How many of you believe being is wrong? The word being is not going to be there. Where did you hear that? Where did you hear that? Here are official questions. where being is correct. Manhattan will not say that being is wrong. Remember this. They might say that there's a likelihood that it would be wrong. They will not say that it is wrong. Okay. The point which is there is you'd see a lot of experts, not reputed experts like Manhattan, but a lot of regular experts just take something. And again, remember this. You're doing GMAT sentence correction. If you want to learn stats, go and learn stats, but don't apply it in GMAT sentence correction. No, it's not a test of stats. It's a test of your ability to express a logical meaning. Here's another thing that people really forget. They really say, hey, if I see a word which is not mentioned in my original choice, but it's mentioned in one of the answer choices, then that answer choice can't be correct. This sentence feels so awkward though. Yes, it does. But it's correct. It communicates the intended meaning. Come to our next session. Okay, I'm going to show 4 official sentences, 700 level questions that are awkward but are correct. And there are going to be beautiful answer choices that would be incorrect. Why? Because those beautifully constructed answer choices, they do not communicate the intended meaning. Register for that SC webinar right now and you will see it there. Not one, but not two, but in 5 sentences. Those beautifully constructed answer choices are smoke screens. They're there to make sure that you kind of take your focus away from meaning. And a lot of experts really say GMAT SC is about grammar. We're going to show you tricks to get there. No, tricks don't work. It's meaning. So meaning before all? Yes, it has always been the case. And here again, in all of this, there was no meaning error in any of the answer choices. There was no grammar error in any of the answer choices. What was there was meaning distortion. Meaning distortion, meaning distortion, meaning distortion. Okay, in choices B, C, and D. No grammar error. Independently, each of these sentences is grammatically perfect. What if we think that 2 choices communicate the meaning effectively? Then you need to figure out why is it that you think? Where is it that you lack that conceptual error? The question that you have to ask yourself is, will a grammar book teach you how to figure out the meaning differences over here that you learned in choice D? Will a grammar book ever teach you that? We also offer live sessions. In the first 2 sessions, which is for 5 hours, we only focus on teaching you how to extract the correct meaning. We have a master comprehension course which only tells you how to extract meaning from sentences. In addition to, the 30 odd application files that teach you that. Or every solution to about 500 odd SC questions that we have in our platform. The other piece that you want to really see is, you remember when I said GMAT SC is a test of those 200 sentence structures? Could you see the sentence structures that were tested in the question that we just solved? Could you see the 5 very different sentence structures and your ability to extract what meaning did they actually correspond to? Yeah. That's what GMAT SC is a test of. It's not about that simple subject verb or that simple comparison or that misplaced modifier. Yes, those misplaced modifiers, those comparisons have a place in the context of meaning. In the context of meaning and nowhere else. Okay. And if you want to get to that 90th percentile, you've got to build those core skills around meaning, around visualization in CR, around understanding comparisons and extracting meaning from comparison. Will option A always be a reference for the correct meaning? It will always be. Now, even over there, I would say that with the caveat that there are a couple of cases that exist. And if you attend that webinar next Saturday, we're going to really talk about those cases. But yes, option A will communicate the correct meaning. Okay. So attend that webinar and you'll see those caveats as well. Okay. Now, one thing which is there is that you can now see why you need different activities at different stages. If you don't know even the concepts, you won't even know how does a modifier, what role does a modifier play with regards to extracting the meaning. If you don't know that you have to figure out all the aspects and how to extract all the aspects, then essentially, regardless of the extent of practice you do at this stage or this stage, you're not going to move forward. Why? Because at learn concept and at learn application, you need to actually slow down and you need to make sure that you learn how to extract all the aspects. It doesn't matter if you take 4 minutes as long as you're able to extract all the aspects. Why? Because guess what? These 200 sentence structures repeat. But if you don't master those sentence structures, you can solve 2000 questions. You're not going to get to that 90th percentile. But if you master those sentence structures, you're going to get to that 90th percentile in 300 questions. Does that make sense? The distinction between as and is that we saw over here in choice D. If you understand this, you're going to apply it everywhere. That's mastering that sentence structure. But if you don't observe that distinction, you'll get 10 sentences which test as versus is. You're not going to be able to figure out which one's correct because you don't know which one's what is it that the author intended to say, right? You'd be playing a game of whack-a-mole in those cases. But if you understand the meaning distinction between as versus is, then you'd be able to say, okay, I've got to figure out what is it that the author is going to say or intends to say, and then is as correct or is correct, because in one instance, either one of them could be correct. So, really speaking, when you look at this, that 90th percentile is about building that right foundation, learning those sustainable methods, and then fixing the gaps that you have over here. And you need feedback again and again. I didn't say questions repeat, I said sentence structures repeat. Remember, there's a difference. Questions never repeat. Sentence structures do repeat. Okay. But that 90th percentile is about achieving perfection in all areas, and which is where that feedback is really important. Okay. And again, where do you get that feedback over here? I'm going to just demonstrate how you and where you get that feedback. Okay. When you're learning concepts, you get 75 personalized feedback points while learning concepts. So when you're learning subject verb, you get feedback. Can you really identify that subject and verb must exist, or the verb must exist for every subject in multiple sentence structures? Can you identify how subject and where subject and verb make sense and where they don't make sense over there? While you're learning concepts, we intersperse learning concepts with learning application, and you get 23 personalized feedback. You get feedback 23 times while learning concepts, whether you're able to apply those concepts. Then you go into Scholaranium, you get another 30 to 50 personalized feedback points. This is where you go to mastering per application and refining to perfection over there. And you can really see how people use this. Here's one of our students, Jim, who actually improved from a V34 to a V42 in about 20 days. He came to us with a V34. This was his ESR. He lagged in critical reasoning. He lagged in sentence correction. We actually looked at his account. We looked at his feedback points. We were able to figure out where he lacked. Okay. And it was very clear he needed to improve his ability scores in CR and SC. We created a 20-day plan for him over here, and he went from that 39th percentile in CR to that 94th percentile in CR. He went from that 63rd percentile in SC to 94th percentile in SC in 20 days. He was able to get to that 770 score. And just yesterday, you can really see, if you Google GMAT Club plus Trust the Process, over here, you'd be able to get to his debrief. You'd be able to download his ESR. And he says, SC, solid grammar can only help you solve easy or medium questions, but grammar plus meaning will carry you all the way up to. In CR, pre-thinking is a game changer. Again, this is one of the other terms that we invented. He actually just yesterday he told me that he got admit from Booth as well. He's applied to two schools, Booth and Columbia. He got into both these schools over here. We'd actually likely be interviewing him in the next 15 months. But you can watch his GMAT journey on our YouTube channel as well. As another case study, Kim, for her, she had a V37, and you can really see RC was a clear area where she needed to improve, and she had a bit of headroom in SC and CR as well. We helped her improve from a V37 to a V44. You can really see the abilities go up, abilities play a role over here, where in SC we helped her improve to that 99th percentile. In RC, we created that personalized study plan to help her improve to that 93rd percentile over here. Okay. Here's another example to really, and this what you really see is that how feedback helps you get to that high score. Okay. This is a subject verb module, and there are a few things that you would really see. First of all, this is really comprehensive. It's just in subject verb, you're looking at a green number, makes sense. You learn all with singular subjects. You see words that change number. The other thing that you would notice is you're not just learning content, you're getting feedback on how well you've learned that content as well. There is an evaluation. This feedback is personalized to you over here. And then you're learning application over here. Now, this guy did not do very well in the application file. A 60% score is something that we call as not acceptable. But he spent 47 minutes on this file revising his mistakes, because of which in the subsequent evaluation, which reinforces these concepts, he was able to get 100%. So he was able to validate that he's actually learned before he moved forward, which is why on the official questions, he was able to excel. Same thing in verbs. This is the verb section. That was the subject verb. This is the verb section. What you really see is that he scored poorly in this verbs quiz. Again, every entity is evaluated over here. But when he scored poorly, he revised. We'd see this. Why? Because when we went in over here, we could see that he had bookmarked these two questions, the questions where he made a mistake. Okay, and again, you can see we track everything, your timing, the difficulty level of question where you make a mistake. And because of which, in the next file, he was again able to get a very high score. Now, he didn't get to 730 in his first attempt. Why? Because earlier on, he didn't track data. He didn't use a meaning-based approach. And he said, my concepts were not bad in attempt 1 and 2. Where I lacked was the application of concepts. While concepts can help you narrow down some things, but the game-changing role happens when you learn how to apply these concepts over here. So with that, I'd like to end this webinar and really say, if you're an e-GMAT student, make sure you work with your customer success team. Make sure you have that clarity as to what's going to be my path to success. How much time am I going to spend? What metrics am I going to really track? And make sure you attend the onboarding session. Make sure if you're stage 3 of learning, make sure you attend the corresponding session over there, which is test readiness and all of that stuff. And if you're a free trial student, if you're not an e-GMAT student, then make sure that you get your target milestones created as you work with one of the GMAT strategy experts. Okay. All right, here's a summary over here. I think you guys know most of it. The key thing that I want to make sure that you take away from this is get to that 730 score if you're aiming for that scholarship. Trust me, I had multiple full fellowships. I didn't pay a single penny for my MBA, and I want you guys to do the same. Not pay a single penny for your MBA, and that feeling that you get when you graduate without a student loan is amazing. I actually put down payment for my first house when I graduated over there. And to do that, make sure you start with the right stage of learning. Make sure you use feedback to improve. Okay, the GMAT online deal, and I know you've been asking this question over here. Will this deal be available in January? Yes, if you want to study in January, it will be available around that 1st of January. We only offer a deal once during a month. It's usually around the beginning of the month. So yes, it will be available then. So, or if you don't want to study now, you can buy, and we also give you the option to pause the course once, so you can pause your course as well, either way. With that, let me actually send you the PDF. And let me share the web links as well. Sigma X Mock. If you want to watch these success stories, you guys can watch these success stories too. So over here. And guys, in the short answer part, if you can give some feedback, that'd be great. And if you've not reserved, here is where you can reserve a link to study to create that personalized study plan for you. Okay. Pooja says, do younger students get more scholarships over older students in European B schools? Not really, not that I know of. Based on my discussions with deans at top business schools, two factors determine scholarship. One is, your GMAT score. The second is how much they like you during the interview. Okay. How do you get most out of e-GMAT? Look at data. First, build your personalized study plan, map it to the stages of journey, and look at data against every activity. Make corrections right then and there. Don't postpone corrections. Okay. Okay. Where can you get the 299 deal? Sandeep, if you can respond to that, that'd be great. SJ, thank you for that feedback. Keep attending the weekend sessions, and we'll try and do more sessions for you. And by the way, as a student, if you buy this, we have a batch starting on Monday. So please, you have 15 days full access to our live sessions, which are, about 10 live sessions, which are only there for paid students. Make sure you register for this. Your tip to someone who's just starting your prep: take a diagnostic test, build that study plan. Don't waste time. You're worried about the quant section since it's a very long time. So again, please put that question over here. I can really say, we are releasing a brand new quant course, which is built for people just like you. So join and ask yourself to your account to be upgraded to that brand new quant course over here. I'm going to share the feedback to this quant course. We've been building this course for 2 years. We are in this month we'll be releasing about 70% of that course. So you can click on this link and see what people say about this course. Do you need to pay additional for scholarship? You don't. No. What's my name? My name is Rajat Sadana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT. All right, guys. With that, again, make sure you download the session PDF, top left-hand corner. Make sure you book your study plan, which is again above the session file, right below the session file. Make sure you take a Sigma X mock, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'd rarely see success stories put in every second or third day. Do you get 5 mocks with a verbal online plan? You don't. That's only with GMAT Online. Again, remember this: mocks are both quant and verbal. So yeah. So that's what we'd say, and they are the world's most accurate mock tests. And they give you such insights that you can go from that 700 to 740 in a very short amount of time. And if you look at some of our reviews on GMAT Club, you're going to be able to see this over here. Here is an example of someone going from 700 to 750 over there. Do you need to buy the official guide if you're giving GMAT in 2021? Not really. If you have 2020, you're fine. Will the new quant course be included on GMAT? Yes, everything that we do. So GMAT Online, any course of releases that we do that be included, they're always included. I always really say your e-GMAT course will increase, will get better every day as you get there. So we, just to really tell you how different we are from other prep companies, we are a company of about 50 people and we just do the GMAT. We have about 8 people in technology. We build our own learning management system. We build our own content. We have 8 people in e-learning team. We have 12 dedicated people in our subject matter team. They work full time for us. When you compare us with any other prep company, you're going to find that they spend, less than a quarter of the resources helping you as the GMAT, and which is why you would see, the difference in success rate. You see 3 people companies where they do the GMAT, the GRE, the SAT, and everything. Whereas you see us, 50% company, we do just the GMAT. Can you buy only Sigma X mocks? You can't. Why? Because you take a mock, you're going to really say, how do I improve? And you're going to need the course for that. So you can't buy just Sigma X mocks. In the same way, you can't buy just the course. Why? Because all of these elements come together. I mean, if you think the content that we created, 60% of that content was created 4 years ago. We've been spending a lot of time building technology, building that trackability. And it's that trackability that helps you get to that 750, 760 score. And frankly, you get to that 700 score, you'd probably not get admission into a top B school. You'd not get scholarship. That ROI is not going to be there. And we understand that, which is why we spend all of that money doing that. Okay, there is a question again, guys. Question in the Q&A pod, bottom left hand, because so that I can figure out the questions. So I have a question by Dhiren. Dhiren says, I have my exam in 35 days. Will I be able to derive value from e-GMAT course on this period? I've quit and if you need if you have about 70 hours or more, you'd be able to derive significant value from it. Actually, depending on where you need help. For example, Jim went from 700 to 770, and in about 20 days, he had about 40 hours of effort. He was able to derive value from it. If you consider 770 admit to booth for a $300 course, I think I'd take it any day. Is there any chance of a one-on-one on the course? When you say one-on-one, what do you mean? Again, guys, questions in the Q&A pod. Tomer, what do you mean by one-on-one? Do we do private tutoring? We don't. It's just, it's just our Pyle and I, if you go to GMAT Club and you look at the most reviewed experts, you would see 4 out of GMAT Club's top 5 rated experts work at e-GMAT. And essentially we could charge $500 an hour and do this, but even then, we won't be impacting very many students. So that's why we've chosen not to do private tutoring. Our goal really is to make our online platform as effective and in fact even more effective than a private tutor is. So which is why we've chosen not to do private tutoring. Which is one of the other reasons why we don't do monthly payments. A lot of people ask, why don't you actually charge me on a per month basis? The problem is, if you do that, then our incentive systems would not be aligned. If I'm charging you on a monthly basis, my incentive is for you to take the longest amount of time that you can take to finish the course, because that's how I'll make the most money. On the other hand, I want to build a course that's as personalized as a private tutor is. So my incentive should be to help you get to that target GMAT score in the shortest amount of time. So if I charge you on a monthly basis, then my incentive and your incentive would not be aligned. Allow students to pay in Indian rupees. You can. If you write to us, it's just that we don't have a problem allowing students. It's just that if you pay in Indian rupees, you'd pay 18% GST. If you're willing to pay 18% sales tax,
we'll happily take your money in Indian rupees. So would you like to pay 18% sales tax, Rajat? Making you pay in US dollars allows you probably pay 1% as surcharge, but you still save 17% because we don't charge you sales tax, which is what in India you call GST. We'll happily ask you. We can take money in any currency. Alston, work with a GMAT strategy team. They'll tell you how to build a proper schedule. Which GMAT school did I grab? Which MBA did I do? That's a really great question. So I compared two schools, Babson and MIT. I did my MBA from Babson. It's the world's #1 school in entrepreneurship. Again, if you want to get into a corporate job, don't go to Babson. But if you want to become an entrepreneur, there's no better school than Babson. So verbal versus quant. Here's something that I would really say. If you like our quant course, if you like our verbal course, the new quant course is gonna make you really say, hey, you want to build your verbal course the way you built your quant course. So Rajat, ask yourself to be upgraded to this. Read the feedback. We've been building this course for 2 years. You can really see the three. We've done alpha and beta trials for number properties, word problem, geometry, and algebra. And you can really see how people have improved. This is going to go in production. Actually, we granted production access to first 20 people on Friday. Another set of 200 people will get access to number properties on Monday, and then the final 10,000 people will get access to number properties on Wednesday. Then geometry will start doing that. So and trust me, you're gonna love that course better than our verbal courses. So yeah, because I can tell you, I've been doing this for 10 years. The way I feel about a quant course, the last time I felt that way was when we were building our sentence correction course over there. So read what people have said about this new quant course. Will the new quant course be available? Yes. Everything. As I really said, any upgrades we do, you get it. For example, very recently, we overhauled the entire verbs module. Okay, and everyone actually gets that. Everyone got the new version of verbs files. So here is an update that we did on November 18th over here. And you can really see how everyone got this. There are two Babson colleges, Babson College and Olin Babson. I went to Babson College, the one in Wellesley. The personalized study plan is one-on-one, Tomar, yes. Yes. You need that level of personalization, so that's why we do that. Is the new quant course live? It is starting to get live. So you'd get the brand new modules in number properties, in algebra, and in geometry over the next 3 weeks or so. And then in word problems very soon into the new year. And then PNC and probability sometime in early February. Are you comfortable? Yes, I had a 760. I am comfortable sharing my GMAT score, yes. Why would I not be? And trust me, this was in 2003. I had only two books available: the Princeton Review and the Kaplan book. And I lived in Germany at that time, where I spoke English the way, which was a literal translation of German. So there was a time when I spoke English where when we would go and play badminton in German, we say "Ich mache Sport heute," and I would say "I play badminton. I make badminton today. Ich mache Sport." Yeah. So those were some very interesting times when I studied for my GMAT. And again, this is when the internet, you didn't have online courses or anything of that sort. Actually, Manhattan GMAT wasn't formed at that time. Session link for next Sunday. Yes. Let's talk about that. Where upcoming free sessions over here. So thank you very much for that feedback, guys. I'm going to move this feedback part away. Here is where you can register. We have the quant workshop tomorrow, and we have the SC webinar next Saturday. We actually, I think, have a number property session next Sunday, which if you go to our website, you can really do that. Do we have a customer service number in India? We don't. I'll be very frank. If you want to talk to us, write to us. If you feel the need, we'll schedule a Zoom call. You will see us. And if you feel the need, here's something that you'd really see. Go read our reviews and you'd really see people talk about our customer service. It's kind of ironical. I made my first two jobs were designing cell phones, and today I'm in a world where I would rather I've not used a phone in a few years. I am of that belief. You want to talk to us? Tell us why you need to talk to us. If there's something that we can't do over, a personalized video that we create for you or a personalized email, we'll get on a Zoom call. We'll fix your problem. Do you have online interactive classes? Yes, we do. We actually include that as a part of the upgrade. So from Verbal Online or GMAT Online, you can buy our live sessions. We actually released them last month. We've not had the chance to update our website with them. But if you go into and log into your customer portal, on the right hand side, you will see a pane where you can sign up for live sessions. With your subscription, you get 15-day full access to live sessions. And beyond that, which allows you to attend about 9 live sessions. And these are paid live sessions, not free ones like the ones that we do on Sundays or Saturdays. But these are paid live sessions, and then if you like them, you can upgrade them for $49 a month. So what does the GMAT online package not include? It includes 15 days access to live sessions, and beyond that, if you need the live sessions, which about 30% of our students do, the other 70% don't, which is why we don't include it. After 15 days, if you feel, you can upgrade to just add them at $49 a month. That's the only thing it doesn't include. Other than that, it includes everything. Ekra says he's learning German, and I can feel your German English. Yeah, the German grammar is very different from English grammar. Actually, German grammar is very very similar to my native Hindi grammar. So which is kind of, you don't make that connection right away, but when you learn German, you actually really see how unstructured English is. Would live sessions cover basics as well? Yes, they do. They do. So again, remember, live sessions are designed to complement the online course. So for example, the first live sessions in SC, they only talk about meaning. Two sessions in SC that only talk about meaning. Then you have a session in just in verbs that talk about timeline. You don't have a session in subject verb. Why? Because the online course does such a fantastic job. 97% of our students do really well in the subject verb module. So we've collected data from our course, and then we have built the online sessions to complement this. Okay. Similarly, in RC, we have 2 sessions that cover just the reading strategies. We would give you 2-sentence passages which would have that contain intense comparison, and we'll ask you to draw inferences out of them. Why? Because that's how RC questions are created. If you bought if you purchased GMAT Online Terrain, go to the study plan. You should be able to use the tool right away. You don't need to wait for someone to help you. You are there. But make sure you take the first Sigma X mock, please. How many sessions in a month? We start a batch every week. So we start an SC, CR, or RC batch every week. We currently don't have live sessions in Quant, but we'll very soon be adding them. Why? Because the entire Quant faculty is working full time building the Quant course. So yes. So overall, I believe we do about 27 sessions in a month or so, which are just for paid students. Remember, these weekend sessions are not included. So those weekend sessions are free sessions, which are for everyone. These 21 sessions are mutually exclusive of these weekend sessions that you guys attend. Each session is about it varies. It's about an hour and 20 minutes to 2 hours, and which is kind of the beauty of it. When you're with customers, you kind of really design a session to be an hour and 20 minutes, and then if some of them have more problems, you stay back and you do that. And danke schön, bitte schön. Yeah. All right. Hopefully this helps you. This helps answer all your questions. Again, join the Quant workshop tomorrow. JD says, is this course, the course is valid for 6 months, can it be extended? Yes, you can extend it for $59 a month, but my question would be, why should you extend it? I mean, unless and until you have an emergency, we understand that, but if you plan properly, you shouldn't need to. Can someone join live sessions before joining the course? No, every live session has prerequisites from the course. Please don't do that. As I said, the live sessions are built on the course. It's just, remember this, we get enough customers where we care about helping you succeed. We don't care about getting one customer here or there. We want to make sure the way you succeed is if you follow the best practices. So don't circumvent the best practices. There's a lot of data that goes into building these best practices out there. Okay. All right, guys, with that, I hope to see you on e-GMAT.com and many of you in the session tomorrow. Now, I won't be hosting the session tomorrow. We'll have another expert from e-GMAT, Atreya, who'll be hosting the session tomorrow over there. And then I hope to see you next Saturday's session. Do you need to buy Manhattan books with our course? Not at all. You should not use any books or any other resource. Please do not use any other resource when you're going through our courses. Okay. If you have it, please put them on the side. Please pack them in a cupboard. Okay. Do not use any other resource. Our courses are way more comprehensive than any book out there. All right, guys. With that, I want to thank you guys for joining me today, and I'll see you on e-GMAT.com.